Well, good morning, at least what's left. I have a lot of material to go through, so I'll probably be going through it rather quickly. From an agenda standpoint, I want to first give an overview of Aptiv and our cybersecurity process. Then we'll talk about the main topic, ISO SAE 21434, why this standard's needed. Why is this being developed? What are some key principles of the standard, the scope, and who's involved in the development, and finally, basically an overview of the overall structure and associated timing. And at time permitting, we'll talk about Cybersecurity Assurance Level, something I'm quite excited about. So first, a little bit about Aptiv. We're a global technology company specializing in secure, safe, greener, and connected. That's sort of our mantra, if you will. So obviously, with that, there's systems that we design in regards to smart vehicle architecture and the associated mobility solutions. I won't go through this. You can review it offline. In understanding, of course, the importance of cybersecurity being integral into your design and development process, as previously discussed, and we have our Aptiv's 4 levels of system security. We do have a cybersecurity lab called CyberSeal, which allows us to do penetration testing, red team testing, and all of the associated capabilities there. So let's get into the main topic. Why are we developing an automotive cybersecurity standard? Well, existing standards, they don't really address things that are unique to automotive. What is unique to automotive? Safety. As we heard before, if your phone gets hacked, somebody's not going to die. Well, with a vehicle, if something goes wrong, well, somebody could die or have severe injuries. Long life cycle, we understand that. With the vehicle, phones you replace every 2 years. Vehicle, average life, 12, 13 years. A long life cycle that we have to deal with. Use of embedded controllers, and all the other items that go along with it. So what is the benefit for automotive cybersecurity standard? One of the goals is to define a common terminology that we'll use throughout the supply chain. So if we're using the same terms, if we're evaluating risk the same way, that will be beneficial. And it will also help make sure that the industry has consensus on key issues and help us set a minimum standard for cybersecurity engineering, which is very important. And also, it will show the regulators that we're working together and act as a reference for regulators to minimize contradictions. And it's important that the industry understands that, or the people understand that the automotive industry, we are taking cybersecurity seriously. So let's give a little background into how did this start? How did 21434 start? Well, as you already know, SAE issued their best practice document. It's not a standard, but it's a best practice, J3061, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, issued in the beginning of 2016. ISO started developing what's called an NWIP proposal on automotive cybersecurity. Then they decided, well, let's partner with SAE. So for the first time in history, ISO and SAE are working together to collaborate on cybersecurity, which is a great thing. It poses some challenges because SAE operates this way, ISO operates differently, but it's going quite well. So it's a partnership on road vehicles, cybersecurity engineering, and it's basically the first time that this is being done. So we have 82 different companies working on it, a combination of OEMs, a lot of the major OEMs. We've got ECU suppliers working on it, microprocessor suppliers, research and validation companies, all sorts of cybersecurity companies and microprocessor providers, as I've talked about, other standards organizations, and technology providers. So what's really good is we have a large group of experts working on this from various parts of the industry, so we have an opportunity to come together and make sure we reach consensus. So this sort of shows it from a pie chart standpoint. OEMs, people involved in security, governance, and others are 82 entities. So what are some important principles of 21434? Well, first of all, it's applied to road vehicles. Okay, so we're not talking anything off-road. And the goal is to provide reasonably secure vehicles and systems. As we understand, you cannot guarantee security, but you can have a level of confidence in the level of security. And it helps show that we're doing due diligence, what we should be doing in cybersecurity. And the focus is on cybersecurity engineering, the overall process of engineering. And it's based on the current state of art of cybersecurity engineering. So, that being said, it's going to be focused on a risk-oriented approach, that all of the design decisions are focused on level of risk, and that will indicate what type of mitigations are needed. So it's a risk-focused standard, and it's helped to help people understand what prioritization is needed in various design issues. So you look at the risk factors that are associated with potential hacks, and then based on that, you can then derive a logical derivation of cybersecurity requirements. And again, that common language is important, to have a common language for managing risk throughout the supply chain. So everything from the OEMs down to the tier 1s, tier 2s, testing, etc. So that common language is important. And useful for managing activities related to cybersecurity. And it's important to understand it's for all phases of the vehicle life cycle, everything from design all the way to decommissioning, so maintenance and decommissioning, the entire life cycle, not just the design process. So what's it applicable to? This is important. It's applicable to the road vehicle, the systems in that vehicle, and components, and software, and the connection to the outside world, okay, to an external computer system, whatever device network. So what is out of scope? Well, there's some things that are out of scope. For example, it will not prescribe specific cybersecurity technologies or solutions. Because if we do, we say you should use this system, well, 3 months later it's obsolete. So we want to make sure that we focus on the right things. It's not going to give you remediation methods. It's not going to include requirements for telecommunication systems or communications to the back office. So it's not going to get into the technical mitigations. It's going to be a process-oriented standard, what you should be doing from a design perspective. And it, for example, it's not going to deal with electric vehicle chargers nor autonomous vehicles. So the purpose, of course, again, the purpose is to make sure we have a structured process in cybersecurity. Make sure we design it up front, and it's done throughout the entire design cycle, and helps us have a structured process to make sure we have successful outcomes to reduce the likelihood of an attack, or likelihood of a successful attack, excuse me. So, and it's the structured process gives a clear means to deal with how threats are constantly evolving. You know, just watch the news and we see the threats. Well, we need a structure and a framework to be able to handle that. And consistency across the automotive industry is also very important. And to basically promote and make sure we have a complete process in regards to decision making. So the joint working group, I'll go through this slide very quick. You can review it offline, but there is a joint working group that's involved with it. There's an equal number of SAE representatives and ISO in regards to voting rights. So there's one vote per national delegation for ISO, one corresponding vote for SAE. The committees are co-chaired by SAE and ISO to make sure we don't have too much ISO representatives or too many SAE, that it's truly collaborative. And this joint working group makes the main decisions on 21434. And it consists of project work groups, which we'll go through in a slide after this one. So ISO has their delegations, SAE has their delegations, and we won't go through this, but it's available for you to review offline. But the project groups, we've got PG1, that is the group that I chair, which is focused on risk management, okay? PG2 is focused, as we can see, on product development, so things related to design, development, testing within the V-cycle itself. PG3, well now, once you've gone into production and operations and maintenance, those aspects within the life cycle. PG4 is sort of an overview committee that deals with the overall overview of the standard and interdependencies between the project groups. There's also a drafting team to work through drafting issues, terms and definitions, and a use case team. We're trying to put together a use case annex in the document to help illustrate the concepts of the standard. So in PG1, we've got about 54 active participants, PG2, 42, 29 in PG3, and in PG4, 37. These numbers change, but give you an overall idea of the number of people actively working on it. So as far as the structure of the standard, this sort of gives you an overview of the overall structure, and I'll go through it in subsequent slides. So the introductory clauses, then an overview in regards to management of cybersecurity. Section 6, which is regarding risk assessment methods and treatment. Sort of how do you measure risk? Then discussion of the concept phase, the product development phase, and then production, operations, maintenance, and decommissioning, and then an overall supporting processes. So we'll go through this in more details on the subsequent slides. So, again, you have your introductory sections. These are basically in every ISO standard, terms and definitions, external references, etc. Then there's the general considerations in management of cybersecurity. So general considerations basically gives an overall overview of the structure of the standard, sort of a high-level overview. Section 5 or Clause 5 is basically the general overall cybersecurity management process over the entire lifetime. Sort of, again, of a high-level overview from a cybersecurity management perspective. Then you get into more details. Clause 6, how do you measure risk? How do you assess risk? And in the concept phase, what are the activities in the concept phase that you need to do in regards to addressing the risk? Sections 8, 9, and 10. Well, 8, product development, of course, and testing. Section 9, the processes related to cybersecurity engineering in post development phases. So once you're in production, incident response, field monitoring, etc. And then Section 10, overall supporting processes. So let's talk about time, and you're probably wondering, well, when is this going to be released? We'll give you a general overview. We had our kickoff in 2016. We had our first internal draft in April of last year. Then we had the committee draft in September. So the committee draft was released for comment. We'll talk more about that in subsequent slides in 2018. And we'll talk about the results of that a little bit. The next step is the DIS stage, or the Draft International Standard stage, set for release in October. That will be a wider ballot, and it will be saleable at that point, available for purchase. So we're expecting a 2020 release. Could be late in the year if the DIS doesn't pass ballot, and we'll talk more about that. So the overall stages, we had the working draft stage, really won't go through that, but that was an internal. Had the committee draft stage, which released for comments, 8-week review period, a lot of comments back, and a formal comment resolution process. We have to formally address all of the comments we've received. The DIS, well, that's the next big phase. We will be issuing this, again, October timeframe. I think it has 5 months for review, well, 12-week review period. 2/3 majority is required for approval, and there can be no major technical comments received, otherwise it will not pass. If it gets some technical comments that are applicable, then we will have to do another stage. And then again, it's publicly for sale. So regarding the current stage, committee draft, over 3,500 comments have been received. It wasn't as mature as we wanted it to be. We're trying to, as the saying goes, is like herding cats, trying to get everybody to agree. I know in my group, the risk assessment group, we've had some arguments. We've had some disagreements. We've come to agreement, but it takes time to build that consensus. So we have to address the majority of those. In May of this year, we're going to have an internal draft internally within our group. We'll review it in preparation for that October release. So we have to define what's normative, what's informative. Normative meaning you shall do this or shall not do this, and the reasons for it. And we have to give a rationale. Why is this required? That should be in the standard as to why something is being required. So that's an overview of the standard. Next topic, looking at my time, I guess I do have time to go through this. I apologize for going through this so quickly. I'm trying to squeeze a lot of material in. This next section talks about some new content that is going to be informative. It's not going to be normative, but I'm quite excited about. It's regarding the Cybersecurity Assurance Level that did get approved. There's a lot of arguments about it. We'll talk about CAL, or Cybersecurity Assurance Level. What is it? What does it benefit? And give you an idea of what that is. So there was a decision to include CAL in the standard. Again, it's informative. It is not required that you use it. But personally, I was one of the people involved in its development. We think it will be beneficial. So I'll give you an explanation as to, well, what is CAL? A CAL level will help describe the amount of process rigor that you need to have in regards to cybersecurity engineering. So emphasis on process rigor. This will become a little bit more clear. So we're going to have a method for determining a CAL level, and it's informational. As I said before, it's not required, but we think it will be beneficial. So it's in the CD, and you can actually review this if you are able to get a copy. So why do we have a CAL? What is the problem we're trying to solve? Well, one of the problems is the standard is big. There's a lot of items in the standard. Do you really have to do everything in the standard for every single project? I don't think you do. So CAL will help you decide what requirements are really applicable to your design, which are optional. So it helps you determine the amount of scaling or effort required in your design process, and a method for communicating those requirements to the outside world. So how does it help? Well, it helps you scale the engineering process that you build in to help assure cybersecurity. What level of, what type of test do I need to run, for example? Do I really need to do dynamic analysis in this particular one? What level of testing do I do, etc.? What level of code reviews do I do? So it is a level of scaling to determine the level of assurance, which we'll talk about, cybersecurity assurance. What does assurance mean? It really means confidence, and I'll talk about that more. And it helps, again, define process rigor. And it helps determine what methods and measures are needed for a particular design, as I alluded to before. So let's talk about the assurance. Well, it's confidence that it meets the target of evaluation, meets the security functional requirements as defined in 15408. It's also confidence that a claim, a cybersecurity claim, will be achieved in ISO 15026. And it's confidence that a deliverable meets its security objectives as defined in 21827 in the IT world. So emphasis that it's the level of confidence. It's not a guarantee, but level of confidence you've met your objective, because security is never absolute. So, purpose of it, well, it's nothing new. The concept is not new. There's various other standards that have similar concepts. Functional safety, it has their SILs, or functional safety, there's the ASILs, the SILs in 61508. So there's various other applications of similar concepts. So we took the best of those and tried applying those in 21434, but there's not a direct mapping, so there had to be some adaptation to 21434. So we learned from those and apply them to 21434. So what's important to understand, CAL and risk, they are connected, but they're not exactly the same, because with CAL, as you see, there's risk factors. This is a complex chart, but during your design phase, your risk is going to change. You have a level of risk, you implement a mitigation, your risk goes down. A hack is revealed in the industry, now your risk goes up because now your device has a potential hack for it. You apply another mitigation, risk goes down. So that's the dynamic portion of risk. CAL is meant to be stable at the beginning of your product life cycle, so you can then determine how to apply various processes, so it's decoupled from the dynamic risk factor. So last slide, throughout the V cycle, you set your CAL at the beginning of your product life cycle, and it's used throughout the product V to help drive when should you be doing certain activities, and more importantly, what activities are absolutely required as a basis of CAL. So again, I'm sorry I went through the slides so quickly, but wanted to reserve time for questions.